Okay. I am recording this on August the 6th. It's about 5 p.m. I will admit I am not really sure how to use this. I've never done this with a tablet before, but I do have a general impression that most of this is going to look ridiculous. But then again, that's probably par for the course. So I'm just going to say a couple of things here because they need to be said. And I just realized this thing is fucking mirrored, but whatever. Don't give a shit. Anyway, so this is going to be a direct response to one Cenk Uygur. And I personally don't give a damn what he thinks of my response. I don't give a damn what he thinks of my race because, yes, I am Jewish. I don't give a damn what he thinks about anything. I'm just going to say this. It's going to be said. It's going up on my channel. And beyond that, I could give less of a crap. So, Cenk Uygur, you're a racist piece of shit. That's all I can say about this. And I say this as a man who is, again, Jewish. I say this as a man who is multiply disabled from birth. I say this as a man who was technically mixed race. I'm technically half Jewish, and God only knows what else. You constantly, and I mean this, constantly lie about the situation going on in the Middle East. October 7th was the beginning of this entire mess. Who initiated this mess? It's a group called Hamas. This group decided that they were going to attack the people of Israel, regardless of who they were, where they were located, or what their status was, whether they were civilian, military, or otherwise, and decided to go on TV and promise to do it again and again and again and again. Here's the thing that you refuse to acknowledge. In the Middle East, women have little to no real rights. That includes voting rights. How did Hamas end up in control of Gaza? Israel, in 2005, left Gaza, ended their occupation. In fact, from what I've been led to understand, they tried to give it back to Egypt, which is apparently who originally may have had control of it. I don't know if that's true. I just know that they did try to give it to some of their neighbors in the Middle East, supposedly. Either way, what ended up happening was there was an election in Gaza. Who won that election? Hamas. What did Hamas run on as a platform? Murder Jewish people. Murder the people who populate Israel. Why? Because the United Nations in 1948 restored partially, not completely, but partially, the Jewish homeland to the Jewish people. Now, I am not overly religious. In fact, despite the fact that I am Jewish by heritage, I am secular. Drove my dad nuts because he did get very much deeper into his religion in the years before, he moved down to Florida, and he did, as far as I know, still more or less practice the faith. As I'd mentioned, I'm Jewish by heritage, but in terms of my religion, I'm kind of a mutt. All right? But that's neither here nor there. Like I said, I'm secular. Always have been, always going to be. I do celebrate, Hanukkah with, the Jewish side of my family. I celebrate Christmas with everybody. And the thing is, what people forget is that they act as though Palestine, quote unquote, was always there. It wasn't. Historically, we know that that was originally, whether or not it went by the name Israel, there's apparently been 3 different iterations of Israel in the course of history, all apparently in that same general area. We constantly talk about, oh, they're Muslim, they should be protected. Like, there are 1 point odd billion Muslims. There are 1 point odd billion Christians. There are, what is it, like almost like 3 billion Chinese. You notice I never hear anybody talk about how we need to protect Jewish people. The last time I heard anything about this was apparently in the direct aftermath of World War II. So Bill Maher has brought this up, and I know you're gonna complain. Oh, he's quoting Bill Maher. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of quote Bill Maher. You know why? He's right. In 1948, Israel was partially restored. I say partially because, again, Jerusalem in its entirety was a Jewish city. It is historic fact that this city was invaded by Muslims and that they tore down one of the most prominent Jewish religious buildings to create the Dome of the Rock. This is historic fact. I know you don't like facts, Cenk, because they get in the way of your narrative. And before you say anything, no, I'm not right wing, because I know that's going to come out of your mouth. I know you're going to say right wing. He's right wing. No, actually, I'm a moderate center leftist. But am I a Democrat? No. I have not been a Democrat for basically the last 5 years. Prior to that, once I was of voting age, yeah, I was a Democrat pretty much my entire life. What drove me away from the Democrats is identity politics, which you're playing right now, so you're not helping your cause or your case when you say that the Democrats should stop playing identity politics, because you're doing it right now. All right? Oh, and before you make fun of my username, all right, that's literally from a book I'm writing. You got a problem with that? Don't give a shit. The name has been one that I've used for characters in fan fiction and have now begun working on my own official novel featuring a character that I have been working on in some way, shape, or form since 1993. Now, getting back to the actual topic of this. Again, Cenk, you're a racist piece of scum. You keep complaining about Israel retaliating against the actions of Hamas in Gaza, even prior to October 7th. You know what the difference is between Israel and Hamas? And make sure to note this. I'm not talking about Gaza. I'm talking about Hamas. Remember that Hamas were voted into power by the only people who are allowed to vote, to the best of my knowledge, in Gaza, the men. The men were given the vote, and they were given the presentation of, here's an individualistic group that wants to pursue peace. Here's a bunch of genocidal maniacs who call themselves Hamas. Who do they vote for? Hamas. Now, you might say, oh, but they didn't have that large of a vote share. Doesn't matter. They still won the goddamn election. You notice there hasn't been an election since Hamas won that election in, 2005, 2006? Because Hamas knew that if there was another election, they would be voted out faster than you could say rabies. All right? Why would they have been voted out faster than you could say rabies? Because they literally did nothing but act on their platform of picking a fight with Israel and trying to murder people in Israel. Their entire fucking manifesto is, we want to murder every Jewish person on the planet and destroy the state of Israel. So don't give me any poor Gaza crap. Because I love how you say, oh, they're trapped there. You know who else is responsible for that? But I noticed you never say a fucking word. Egypt. They are right on the border. It would not take much to get the civilians out, let the IDF go in, find Hamas's forces, if they're still there. I mean, they might have, tried to sneak out with the civilians, in which case, hopefully Egypt would be smart enough to weed them out, but, who knows. And then Once that was done, once they had rescued the hostages, leave, bring back the people from Gaza, help them reconstruct the place, hold new elections if possible, just make sure that, nobody from Hamas and nobody with an anti-Israel bent is elected. Now I know you're always saying, "Oh, but then you're denying them the right to be angry." No, they can be angry as much as they want, but they should be angry at the right people. Peace was never going to be possible with Hamas in charge. Now I know what you're going to go to. You're going to go, "Oh, but Netanyahu is the one who backed them." Maybe he did, but if he did, he was perhaps unintentionally playing four-dimensional chess, because you know what? Voting for Hamas showed them exactly what their real mindset was. And I mean the people of Gaza. It also showed the world what Gaza's mindset was. They didn't want peace. They never wanted peace. If they had wanted peace, they would have gone and voted for the peaceful group that was running for election. Instead, they ran and voted for Hamas. Regardless of what the vote share was, they voted for Hamas. They voted for the genocidal fucking lunatics. Now, you complain about them killing, supposedly, and I say supposedly because they have not claimed responsibility for this. You notice they've claimed responsibility for the deaths of the leaders of Hezbollah. But to my knowledge, they haven't claimed responsibility for the death of, I'm going to butcher this, I know, Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. We have no proof who actually pulled that off. But even if it was Israel, this is a guy who literally went on television and promised to repeat October 7th repeatedly. And you're going to call him moderate? Okay, Cenk, I'm probably going to say this more in this video than I've said in a while. Go fuck yourself. You racist scumbag. Oh, and if you're going to make fun of the lazy eye, I don't give a shit. It's been lazy all of my life. It's also blind. I see the world from one side of my face, and I can still see better than you can, even with the diabetes and the glasses, which I'm not wearing today. So let me just make this very clear. If there was to be peace in the Middle East, it was never going to happen with Hamas in charge. What they needed were people who were going to work with Israel rather than against it. People who weren't going to go, well, we want to murder them because they're not Muslim, which again is part of the reason why Hamas is so keen to kill them. Let's also remember that even as far back as 1948, the two-state solution had been offered. It was turned down, and Israel was attacked. And they defeated the attackers. Then you complain about, occupied territories in the West Bank. Yeah, territory that was lost as a result of a war that was initiated by, 6 countries? Egypt, I believe, was one. I think Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria were among them. I don't know what the other ones were. The so-called Six-Day War in 1967. They attacked Israel simply for fucking existing. And lost. And yet you notice, anytime they have genuinely tried to have peace talks, genuinely tried to establish peace, it's usually happened. So what exactly makes Gaza and the West Bank so different? I can't speak to the West Bank. I really can't. I can speak to Gaza, though. What makes them different? Hamas. Hamas is part of what makes them different. And what also is part of what makes them different is quite literally they have never really honestly tried to sit down and hammer out peace. Now, personally, my thought on what would be a decent peace deal is here's what you do. And to be fair, Cenk, you yourself have even suggested this in part. Putting up an actual wall between the West Bank and Israel wouldn't be a bad idea. Completely separate them. There would be one caveat, though. Two places that would not be in the West Bank's control. One, I believe they call it East Jerusalem, because again, Jerusalem is a Jewish city in its origins. We know that it was invaded. We know that they tore down several buildings to put up new ones. We know that they tore down a major religious center to build the Dome of the Rock. So there's that. And then Bethlehem, basically. Put those outside the control of the Palestinian Authority, wall off the rest of the West Bank from Israel, and basically set it so that the only time that these two groups will ever cross paths is during official meetings between state officials. That's it. As far as Gaza goes, hell, take the people out of Gaza that are in there, put them in the West Bank, let them basically annex what's left of that, because then you've got everybody over in the West Bank. That becomes Palestine. And boom, problem solved. Now, nobody will do that because they'll go, oh, but that's Islamophobic. No, it's literally, you want to have Palestine be basically two different parts of land surrounding Israel. Now, to be fair, Gaza's not large, but it does not make a lot of sense. I'll be honest, I kind of felt this way about Alaska being part of the U.S. because it's like technically attached to Canada. And we don't even use oil pipelines anymore. So it's not like the main reason that we even had purchased Alaska, to my knowledge, is even an issue. At this point, Alaska is largely untamed wilderness at this point. The gold rush is long over. But historically it's been part of the U.S. for the better part of the last 100-odd years. So as weird as it sounds to me to have part of the country that far away from us, literally land locked to Canada, hey, fine. I'm just as weirded out by, Hawaii because, we kind of did more or less conquer that. Whether we did that through diplomacy or legitimate conquest, I don't really know. It's been a long time since I've cracked open a history book. And, yeah, if you want to claim, he doesn't know his history, yeah, I really don't give a shit. Really don't. But I'm going to say this straight up. This is how you solve the issue of the Middle East. Everybody who was in Gaza, move them into the West Bank, erect a barrier between Israel and the West Bank, make sure that all of Jerusalem is returned to the Jewish people. I don't care if that means that Muslims lose the Dome of the Rock. This would, they shouldn't have even been allowed to have that part of Jerusalem in the first place. It would be just as stupid as the idea of suggesting that, why don't we give the Jewish people part of Mecca? Jerusalem is the holiest site in Judaism, or at least the holiest silly. I swear to God I can talk. City. So, Cenk, here's the other thing. You keep claiming that you're Muslim. No, you've literally said you're an atheist. But I love how you constantly harp on about how people are basically supposedly going, if somebody's Muslim, it must be okay to kill them. No, nobody's being killed because they're Muslim. At least not that I'm aware of in terms of what Israel has done. Even if we assume that Israel is responsible for the death of this one Hamas leader in Tehran, which again, they have not claimed responsibility for, to my knowledge, which is kind of telling considering that they have claimed responsibility for the death of Hezbollah leaders in the same, general time period. Long story short, these people were not being killed because they were Muslim. They're being killed because they were clear and present and avowed threats to Israel. Now, you complain about the United States working with Israel, allying with Israel. Well, yeah, they've been our allies for decades. We have security pacts, we have security agreements, and we also have trade agreements. More to the point, Israel is not a pariah state, unlike, say, Iran. When you get right down to it, if you are a part of a terrorist organization, and I don't give a damn what Iran or Qatar consider Hezbollah or Hamas to be, they're terrorist organizations. They have carried out acts of terror. They have done this repeatedly. And yet you have the gall to claim that people are being killed because they're Muslim? No, they're not being killed because they're Muslim. They're killed because they've carried out terrorist acts. And in the case of Hania, and again, I'm probably butchering the name, he's promised to have this done repeatedly. And you try to claim this man is a moderate. He's not. He never was. I've said this already. I'll say it again. The way to peace in the Middle East, take all the civilians out of Gaza, put them in the West Bank, wall the West Bank off from Israel, prevent any and all interaction between civilians of the two sides. The entirety of Jerusalem be returned to the control of the Jewish people. Bethlehem, maybe. Not really worried about that. Just figured I'd throw it out there because Bethlehem means nothing to the Muslims anyway. It has no connection to them. It does technically have connection to both Jews and Christians because of the mytho-historic nature of the city. And then basically just have the state officials of both sides be the only ones who interact. They can go right to, and I'm talking about the West Bank here, since they're right on the border with Jordan, they can do trade with them. They can do trade with pretty much, they might have to use Jordan as proxies for trade, but they could certainly do it. This would help them to get their economy back on their feet. As for the so-called occupied territories, clear them out. Send them over to Gaza at that point, because at that point, Gaza could just be reconstructed and just use that. If you're going to move everybody into one area and have that be Palestine. Alternatively, you could just create the state of, I don't know, call it the state of Gaza and the state of Palestine, but it wouldn't make sense for it to be Palestine on two different sides of the landmass that is Israel. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes no more sense to me than the idea of Alaska, being geographically considered America, even though it's attached to Canada. Does that mean I have anything against Alaskans? No, I've got absolutely nothing against them. And as far as I'm concerned, they're as American as anybody else. I just find it weird that, part of our country, which is still, part of the landmass, isn't even part of, the landmass that makes up the U.S. But then again, to be fair, we also have Baja California, so that's a whole other thing. So, yeah, technically our map kind of cuts off the bottom half of California anyway. Weird, but what are you going to do? But the other thing I need to say, Cenk, is your constant race baiting is disgusting. And this is the other reason why I say you're a racist piece of shit. You constantly go on and on about how, somebody who promised to carry out the October 7th attacks repeatedly was a moderate? You stupid, racist fucking animal. That's not a moderate. I'll take that back. That's an insult to animals. You're pond scum. No, I'll take that back as well. That's kind of an insult to pond scum. I don't even know if there's an insult that really would fit you that isn't an insult to somebody else. No, there is actually. I said this earlier. You're a piece of shit. All right? And you don't help the polarization of this country or any other with your racist rhetoric. All right? Part of the reason that I left the Democrats behind is because of people like you. Not Muslims, not immigrants, so-called progressives, so-called liberals. Because you're about as illiberal as it gets. You complain when, people say we need to have strong borders. Other countries have strong borders. Nobody bitches about that. Nobody calls the Japanese racist for, maintaining a strong border. Nobody calls the Chinese racist for maintaining a strong border. Nobody calls the Canadians racist for maintaining a strong border, even if they do have a fairly permissive immigration policy. They still maintain border control. The same is also true for Europe. I would assume, presumably true for, most parts of, Africa that, maintain a strong border but aren't completely insane. You constantly make it out like if you're a minority, everybody's out to get you. Cenk, I'm a minority, multiple times over. Nobody's out to get me unless it's somebody who has the same general points of view as you do. The kind of person who will complain and bitch and moan when a country that is attacked by avowed terrorists retaliates. The same kind of person who will complain when the Supreme Court doesn't rule in your favor, despite having been left-leaning for the better part of a century. Now that it's only slightly begun to lean towards the right, you want to complain and bitch and moan and say, oh, we've got to pack the court so this way we can get the rulings we want. You're the kind of person who drove me away from the left. I still consider myself left of center, but I will never be a Democrat. Not again. Anytime in probably the next who knows how long. In fact, because of the behavior of the mainstream media, and to a lesser extent, you guys, because you've gotten worse of these. I used to be a fan. I really did. These days, I watch just to see what, as I call you, the lying shitbags are lying about now. Because you never let the facts get in the way of your narrative. I'll give you credit for that, if nothing else. But you don't know what honesty is. You don't know what the facts are. I think like the last time I heard you say anything I even partially agreed with was the fact that you were willing to condemn the attempt to assassinate Trump. Which, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of fucking conspiracy theories going on about that. And the FBI is now desperate to try to go, oh, well, maybe it wasn't actually a bullet. So what killed that fireman? Whatever. But then you got behavior, again, like yours, where you complain about, well, how dare we, go to the aid of one of our allies? How dare we honor our security agreements? Like, I'd ask if you're serious, but we pretty much know you are. And that's really disturbing. Now, to be fair, I don't particularly agree with the Republicans' view on this, that we shouldn't be, sending aid to Ukraine or Israel, because clearly they do need it. But then you complain about, oh, but we've sent them so much money. Yeah, how much have we sent to Hamas? Hundreds of millions, if not at least $1 billion over the years? Where did all that money go to? It wasn't to building up Gaza. You know where it went to? Rockets. Underground terrorist tunnels. In other words, it went to everything but building up Gaza and helping them become stable on the world stage. And you want to bitch about us going out to protect somebody that we are allies with from terrorists? Whether it be Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis, all three of them are terrorists. The only difference between the three, as far as I can tell, is that Hamas was voted into a position of power, acted on the platform that they ran on, i.e., we want to murder the state of Israel and its people. Now, you keep saying, oh, Netanyahu's got a right-wing government. Right-wing by what standard? I mean, yes, he is being very aggressive in trying to deal with the situation, but let's be honest here. Who started the whole situation? Hamas on October 7th. Prior to this, Israel had maintained a position of relatively restrained retaliation for any attack that came out of Gaza. You may not like it, but it's a fact. Then you have a full-scale fucking, terrorist attack, an invasion on October 7th. I mean, what did they think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen? I mean, I love how you go, oh, but they're just resisting. Resisting what? Literally, this is literally no worse than what any other country would do when they're attacked by somebody else. Now, I, for one, I'm still absolutely flabbergasted at Bush Jr. going after Iraq when they had nothing to do with the 9/11 attack. But I mean, at least the response initially was the kind you would expect. Go after the group that went and attacked you. Now, he went off the rails, sure. But what are you expecting from Israel here? What are you expecting them to do? Are you expecting to go, oh, these guys attacked us. They said they want to do it multiple times. Oh, and they literally got in their manifesto, they want to murder every Jewish person in the state of Israel, if not the entire world. Should we just let them do that? Are you fucking nuts? I mean, maybe you are. Maybe you fucking are. I don't know. Maybe you're out of your fucking mind. Maybe you're just racist. I don't know. I mean, to my perspective, that's what it looks like. You look like you're basically just completely racist. Now, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it. But based on your behavior, based on the things you've said, I'm sorry, Cenk, you're disgusting. I see you as a racist because you say and support racist things. You keep saying, oh, democracy's on the line if Trump gets reelected. He was elected in 2016. First off, we don't even live in a democracy. We live in a representative republic. And surprise, surprise, Cenk, we still do. We still have a republic. We're still a democratic country. If you want to keep saying the word democracy, but hey, fine. Going by that then, either way. Democracy didn't end. The stars didn't fall out of alignment. The planets didn't go spinning off into space. The sun didn't go nova. Rhetoric like yours emboldens people like Hamas, emboldens people who do stupid shit and expect there to be no repercussions. You want peace in the Middle East? So do I. So does damn near everybody else in the goddamn country. But the way you want to do it is not going to work. It's also fucking anti-Semitic as hell. And that's why I have to say again, go fuck yourself. I'm honestly kind of glad I'm not a YouTube partner. I would have been demonetized from the minute this started. And yeah, this is a rambly video. I literally freaking started this right after seeing your goddamn bullshit video where you complain about, how dare the U.S. go to protect one of its allies when Iran threatens to do something stupid, despite the fact they have no evidence of who actually killed a Hamas leader. Even if it was Israel, what are they expecting here? What were they expecting? They allow a terrorist leader to be in their country. There's a fucking warrant out for this guy, supposedly. I don't know if the warrant's been issued yet, but I love how you keep going, but the ICC and the ICJ are looking for warrants. You seem to love the idea that they're going to issue these warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu or other members of the Israeli government, but you don't seem to like the idea that people who are supposed to be signatories to the ICC or the ICJ haven't done a damn thing about an individual who is supposed to also potentially have had a warrant put out for him? Double standard much? What was it you were saying in that video, Cenk, about double standards? Yeah. Yeah, you don't like it when it's aimed at the people who are Muslim. We get that. You keep talking about a Muslim ban, by the way. Yeah, that's not what happened. First off, that was a list of countries that was created by Obama that was supposed to restrict travel from those nations. Trump just continued on with it. I love how you refuse to answer to that part of the situation. You want to make everything about left versus right, us versus them, but you will never produce the full story and talk about the full story. You'll only talk about the parts that actively benefit you. I know you don't like being called out on this, Cenk. And I know you'll say something about how, I'm right wing. No, I'm center left. I'm just not a Democrat. I'm an independent. However, because of the behavior of every single member of the left who plays identity politics, and I'm not particularly fond of it on the right either, but they don't do it nearly as much. So I'm at least willing to give them a listen, even if I don't agree with most of their shit. But these days, I know what's going to come out of the mouth of the left. I see it from you all the time. For at least the foreseeable future, I am never blue, no matter who. Now, does that mean I'm going to go vote for Trump? Probably not. I haven't decided yet who I'm going to vote for or if I'm going to vote. I typically only vote during the presidential cycle. I haven't had a chance to really see what Trump's platform is. I don't really know that much about RFK's platform. I'm not interested in Kamala Harris. This is a woman who was literally tasked with dealing with the border, failed, and then proceeded to choose a far left-leaning member of the Democratic Party to be her running mate. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't care. Never blue, no matter who, at least for the foreseeable future. And quite frankly, any group that tries to say that we should not honor our commitments to Israel is a member of government I refuse to acknowledge. It's also a member of the media who I will straight up say, go fuck yourself. Because I will not suffer the ideas of anti-Semitic assholes. And that includes you. You may say, "Oh, but I'm Muslim." Yet, no, you've already said you're an atheist. Muslim isn't a race. Muslim is the name of somebody who follows a religion. Jewish people are a race because they are, of course, tied to the fact of being Hebrew in origin. You can convert to Judaism, but that doesn't make you part of a Jewish race. That makes you part of the Jewish religion. There is a difference. I myself am a fourth generation Polish American on at least one side of the family. Also, interestingly enough, the Jewish side of my family. I have no problems with immigrants. I have no problems with a reasonable form of gun control. I do not agree with the idea that banning guns is going to do anything, because it won't. I do not believe in the idea that the government should be given large amounts of control over our lives. I do not agree with the idea that the Supreme Court is, quote unquote, destroying our country. And yes, I've heard that from you. I've heard that from from the mainstream media, which at this point almost entirely leans left. There's all of one channel on what we would consider the mainstream that leans right, and that's Fox News. Okay? So what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say, Cenk, is that your behavior has been disgusting. Your rhetoric is racist. I feel like that makes you racist. I've presented my idea for means to pursue peace in the Middle East. Will anybody take me up on it? No. Will people try to call me racist for even suggesting what I've suggested? Yes. I don't give a shit. I really don't give a shit. This had to be done. This had to be said. And quite frankly, I don't expect a response. I don't even expect you'll see it. I don't know if anybody else will see it. People who will see it will be a little confused because, again, as I've mentioned, I'm blind in the right eye, but tablet is, for whatever reason, mirroring the image, but whatever. But long story short, this was a response to your idiotic comments about Israel, saying, why are we defending somebody we have a security alliance with, somebody we have security treaties with, somebody we have agreements with? That's literally why. We do have those agreements. We do have those treaties. We do have everything else that we have that we are linked to them with. They are a democracy. And you want to fucking call Turkey a democracy? Yeah, maybe, but Lord only knows they are not in a good place right now. They haven't been for a long time. Erdogan is really bringing that country down. But again, if Iran is stupid enough, and maybe they are this stupid, I don't know. The last time Iran tried to attack Israel with that 300-odd missiles, they were stopped, and then Israel retaliated. And that was the end of it. If Iran is stupid enough to try to attack Israel for dealing with a leader of Hamas, assuming it was even them, because again, they haven't claimed responsibility for it. I find it very interesting. They claimed responsibility for the deaths of Hezbollah leaders, but they haven't said a damn thing about this one guy in Iran. So either they didn't do it, or they haven't got confirmation that it was them. Either way. But then what the fuck do I know? I'm just a guy in his mid-40s who happens to think there's a lot simpler of a way to deal with the issue of the Middle East. May not please everybody, but that's probably the best sign that it's a good solution. It's one that not everybody's quite happy with, but it'd be one that everybody could live with. And for those of you who came in late, and I don't know how you could actually do that, considering I don't think that's how YouTube works, what is that solution? Well, Cenk actually suggested part of it himself in a video a while back, and it's one of the few things he's ever said I agree with. Wall off the West Bank from Israel, return the entirety of Jerusalem, meaning whatever part is in the so-called West Bank, to Israel, maybe Bethlehem as well, and then basically cut all non-essential contact between the two sides. Move the civilian population of Gaza into the West Bank. You keep complaining about how there's nothing left in Gaza for them to deal with. Move them into the West Bank. Get anybody from Israel out of the West Bank, aside from, again, that part of Jerusalem that they'd be regaining. Reconstruct the land from Gaza, put them in there. I don't care. And then basically keep all contact between the West Bank or Palestine, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and Israel just to state officials. The West Bank / Palestine / whatever you want to call it can do trade with Jordan and can, ask them for aid in trading with other nations if necessary. And let that be the end of it. Will people call me racist for saying that the Jewish people should get back a city in its entirety that was Jewish in origin? Yeah, I'm sure they will. But let me ask you something. Why should the Muslim people be allowed to have part of a city that was created by the Jewish people? That's just as stupid as saying, well, why don't we give part of Mecca to Jewish people? Nobody in their right mind would suggest that seriously, because it would make sense. The Jewish people are, in fact, the original people in that area of land. This is historical fact. Jewish people were the victims of multiple diasporas, and you've got people complaining about, oh, but what about what happened to the people who were living there who called themselves Palestinians? It's like, literally, Israel was an invaded territory. It was stolen land. It was partially restored to the Jewish people in 1948. It's not in its entirety, of course, but it was still more than they'd had at that point. I find it hilarious. It's like people go, oh, but it was okay when the Palestinians did it. Okay, so basically, again, we got Cenk Uygur's favorite comment here, double standard. When the Jewish people were forcibly removed from that part of the world or forced to live under Muslim occupation, it was okay. But when Israel was restored, even if only partially, that was a bad thing? Yeah, okay. Whatever. Pretty goddamn racist in my view. And, yeah, if you don't like the fact that I'm calling out that racism, I don't care. Move on. And live with it. Bye-bye.